My name is Joe Herdlicka. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Iowa Telecommunications Association. And our association is part of the group that is hosting this event, Iowa LinkedUp. Iowa LinkedUp consists of my association, the Iowa Telecommunications Association, the Rural Iowa Independent Telephone Association, as well as Iowa Network Services. And we came together about 3 years ago knowing that we needed to do a better job as an industry of promoting and educating consumers, policymakers about the importance of broadband connectivity in rural communities. So that's how we got started. And when we learned more about the technology you're going to see today, with it being so broadband enabled, we thought, wow, what a great example to bring to the media, to really, and some other officials who have joined us today, to really illustrate why this is so important to economic development in Iowa's rural communities, and why this is so important to a very critical industry in Iowa, agriculture. I mean, I think what you will see after you see the demonstration of this platform today is it is making farmers smarter, more productive, it is making them safer, and it is making them more mobile, which is something they are demanding. And it's all accomplished through robust broadband connectivity that companies like Interstate Communications and Chat Mobility, who you will hear from today, and Iowa Network Services are enabling in the state of Iowa. We're going to do this from two fronts today. Not only are we here from Iowa Network Services, but you can see behind me, our star today will be Joe Hassel. He's one of the first customers in using this technology in Iowa. And he's really going to show you the hands-on mechanics of how this works for him in his day-to-day operation. Before I do that, I want to introduce a couple of folks who are some dignitaries who have taken time from their busy schedules to join us today. I know Darren Leach from the U.S. Department of Agricultural Rural Development has joined us. He's on site in Emerson. I believe Emily Clark from Congressman Latham's office has joined us there. We have Aaron McKay all the way in the back from Senator Grassley's office. John Moreland from Senator Harkin's office has joined us. Representative Scott Orth from Ackworth has joined us. He took some time from hauling some things today to join us. And Representative Sally Stutzman from Riverside is joining us via a Ustream link we set up for her to join us. She was very interested in learning more about this technology. Heather Honkamp is from the USDA Rural Development section as well, so thank you for coming, Heather, today too. We're going to lead you through talking to some experts who are a lot more educated about this technology than Christy or I am. Then we're going to leave plenty of time for questions and answers, and folks will stick around for any one-on-one interviews that any of the representatives of the media may have. So to navigate through some of our experts here, I'm going to call up Christy Peterson, who is Marketing Manager with Iowa Network Services. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, everyone, for joining us here at Iowa Network Services and at Emerson. We really look forward to having you here and have the opportunity to share this information. INS, if you're not familiar, was founded 25 years ago on the sole purpose of providing kind of what we call centralized equal access to the independent phone companies across the state of Iowa. 5 years later, we introduced our product called NetINS, which is our internet services, and the broadband explosion happened from there. And that's really where we are with our technology today. INS has about 150 independent companies across the state of Iowa that we provide fiber connectivity to. We also provide telecommunications services and business services to small business, medium business, some large business, carriers, and wireless companies. And so we're diversifying and expanding. Collectively, with the independent phone companies, you can see from a map behind me, and we do have copies of that map here for you and on a jump drive if you'd like to take. We have over 5,000 miles of fiber optic network throughout the state. That's a lot of network, and it's growing daily. We, as we speak, are deploying fiber in the ground right now, and so it's really hard for us to pinpoint exactly how many miles we do have. Even the ITCs, or independent phone companies, are deploying fiber. And so we are committed as an organization and industry here in Iowa to continue with connectivity. Those partners are like Interstate Communications. They are one of those 150 individual companies who have deployed fiber to the home and to rural Iowa to help make these types of services like the Smart Farm available. But it just isn't our hardline connectivity, it also requires a wireless delivery. Wireless communications is dependent on the wireline technology that we enable. And it's the partner then with Chat Mobility who has been able to bring this all to life. The guts of all this is Clear to There. So without our infrastructure, Clear to There would not be able to deliver their solution. Clear to There is a partner that INS has established recently, and we have a vision and goal to deploy surveillance and home automation and smart farm technology across the state. We'll ideally be looking at communities that are served by independent phone companies, but hopefully within a few years we'll be able to expand that. So now I'd like to introduce Craig Steen, who is from Clear to There, and he can share a little bit more about the fun components of what this technology can enable.
Okay, good. Thanks, Christy. Okay, yeah, welcome. Really glad to be here, and we're just going to give you what everyone likes to see, and that's a live system. I don't even like to call it a demo because it is a live system, working system. And we're able to connect, just like Christy said and Joe, due to the fact that we've got broadband connectivity all the way out to Joe's farm. Joe's actually probably about 3 miles outside of Emerson, and the exchange that Interstate Communications provides down in southwest Iowa. So we deployed this system. We started really deploying about a year ago. And then we got into harvest, and Joe was busy off combining, as a grain farmer, combining the fields, and then winter kind of set in, and so we didn't really get things kind of all put together until this spring. And we keep, as Joe has seen the technology come about, we keep adding to it, because Joe keeps coming to me and saying, you know, how about I add some more locks to my machine sheds? You know, I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in those machine sheds. So we keep adding to it, but we're in a position here today with Interstate Communications as well as INS in order to deliver this. And what amazes me is we're able to deliver also live video conferencing. That to me is just like top quality. So we put this all up in just a matter of snap a finger, it seemed like, with Chris and some of the folks at INS. So Joe, I'm gonna lead you down, but I think the first thing that I want you to just talk about is as an Iowa farmer and your story of about 6 years ago about technology and what you saw coming about as an Iowa farmer. So I'll let you tell that story, because you do it well.
Well, I don't know about that, but about 6 years ago, I'd started out and I thought, as I told Craig, that I could just retire. I'm 58 years old without any, technology. So I thought about that for a few days and I thought, well, that was pretty poor thought process right there. So we started adding technology basically to our equipment first through the use of row shutoffs on our planters, the shutoffs on our sprayer, and then from there we added through the harvesting process. It's just escalated immensely since that point. We could see the savings in the row shutoffs, in the herbicide. Like I say, we were saving money. We weren't double applying any herbicide as far as being, creating problems for our entire setup. No, sorry. I don't know if it was just went asleep. Okay, all right, we're back, I guess. So, but we, in fact, I was just telling one of the reporters, through the use of our technology, I've carried wind and green snap insurance on my crop the last couple of years, and we've had severe wind here the last 2 years. We've combined about 1,200 acres of corn. This down, tangled, broke off. Last year, we had a claim, and if you're over a certain dollar figure, you had to go through an audit. through the process, I took my mapping off my combine and we sent that into the insurance company and they were just elated. We proved out our claim without having to go through a great deal of paperwork. But since that point, Craig's entered into the farmstead and we've put up the level of security that I thought I'd never see in my lifetime on this farm, actually. I always joke about 10 years ago, I always said I really didn't need insurance. I was poverty protected. I didn't have anything worth stealing. But there's a lot of dollars in the machine sheds. There's a lot of dollars in the grain bins. And as we do so much book work through our computer system, I'd hate to see that tapped into as far as a house break-in or anything like that also. But we've got that level of security as far as the visuals, the camera system, the temperature control in the shop, in the house, whether it's getting too cold in the shop or getting too warm or too cold in my house, the water flow, if my wife can actually get me to leave and go traveling, if we have a water line break, we'll know it through text, electricity, the input of electricity, the bins. Now I can go out there and harvest with the bin master. I can measure my bins with that. I can continually measure those bins on a weekly basis. I've always stated that the grain in my bin is no different than the dollars in my checking account each year, or each week, I should say. You have a constant watch on that. The lock system is just unbelievable. The biggest joke my wife likes to play on me is I go to coffee at 6 o'clock in the morning, and if I fail to lock the door, she'll look and she'll lock the door. So when I come back home, if I have to enter the house, it's locked up again, of course. And we can leave and recheck our locking system. We can turn lights on and off throughout the house. As I said, the entire system, it just keeps getting better and better. Just recently, I don't know if I stated it before, as far as the fuel level in the fuel tanks I've got out here, it's pretty amazing when it gets down there. I mean, when we're harvesting, we're fairly, if not very busy. When it gets down to a certain level, I can send out a text to my fuel supplier that, hey, I'm getting low on fuel, please get some delivered, at a certain point. It simply amazes me, the technology that's available to us. And in fact, Craig and I have talked about the bin setup, heat in the bins, if it's going to detect that. And I keep trying to come up with some ideas for him, and he keeps throwing more and more at me. It's really unimaginable what we can do out here.
Let's just, that's a great entry into, we'll show actually live here how Joe from his remote device. As you see up on the screen here, and obviously just because of the audience, we're putting it up on the screen so you can kind of see us go through some of the motions and stuff with some of the apps. So think of this, that we can deliver, I've got my iPad tablet here, and of course we've seen the tablet explosion in the last 3 or 4 years. I say, Steve Jobs is looking down from Apple, probably didn't really realize what the adaptability of this was going to be, young or old. So we've seen a great adaptation here. Obviously, we've seen adaptation with the smartphone. And so I've got the app up here on my smartphone, just like I do on my tablet. We're showing it up here on the screen. But this gives that capability and that flexibility for, again, if you're just down having coffee, and you've got a temperature that changed, or let's say even a motor or off of the drying bin shuts off. That's something very important to a farmer during harvest. So you immediately can get a text or an email to do that. So we have that capability here, and also to the computer, to the laptop. Joe's sitting in his office down there, is sitting in front of his desktop, and they're going to control some of these devices. So if we look at, and this is awful small, you can look at this afterwards, but this just gives you an idea where Joe's at. We've got his office over here. He already mentioned we've got locks and thermostats. We've got his house. We have a lot of things going on in his house. We've got energy management. So we're actually being able to give him a report that shows how much electricity he's using. And that could be on a daily basis, weekly basis, or monthly basis. Now, if you were a operator, I don't care big or small, and you wanted to really control those expenses, you could set thresholds. You could set a rule that says if I get over X amount of dollars in any given day, let me know. Maybe I've got something, a motor that's not properly grounded. So you can have that type of technology built into a platform like this. He mentioned the grain bin. We're going to look at a grain bin monitor here in a moment. He's actually got 2 grain bins here on the farm, or actually 3. And then we're also monitoring a grain bin that's 3/4 of a mile down the road. And we're able to do that through wireless type of technology there. So let's just dive into it. I'll let you guys on that end. Why don't we start and let's just show a couple things. Let's show let's show the grain bin. Let's bring the grain bin meter up. So there you go. And actually, will you launch on that end to do a measurement on the Phelps dryer? So like a lot of farmers, this is one of Joe's main bins that they're going to dry corn during the harvest season. And once it reaches to that point of being dry, then it'll be moved to another grain bin. So that's pretty common practice. But they've launched the measuring thing. And so what's physically happened, and we actually have one of these smart bobs that's outside the door here, it's dropping a sensor down into the grain bin. And then when it hits the grain, it's going to come back up. We've already calculated what the capacity in that grain is. So as Joe says, this is like his bank account. We can actually not only tell him if there's a change in the grain level in that bin, so, but we also can calculate based on the price of grain per bushel of how much is in his bank account. And unfortunately, that price per bushel has been going down here the last 12 months. So, nobody likes their bank account going down, but that's what it's been. The bin on the homestead there is actually, it's empty right now. Of course, when they get into harvest, those things will start changing there. So that gives you some idea from the grain bin. Let's look at just pop up like the fuel tank. He mentioned the fuel tank. I mean, I think for any farmer, the worst thing can happen during harvest is your diesel, you run out of diesel. And so now you got hired men and equipment and the threatening storm that's coming, and you're sitting there and you don't have any fuel. So looks very much the same. He's got 4 tanks on his farm, so all of those tanks, when they reach either 20, 25% or whatever he wants to set, they'll send off a text to his fuel provider, who then can be, let's say, on the road to Joe's farm.
That's done automatically? Okay.
Yes, it is. It's done automatically. Okay, let's look at, let's just look at like the locks. And I like this application. Joe has been one. I think we first started last summer with about 3 locks. We're actually looking at the house here. And these are real-time bidirectional sensors, so to speak. So, the actual back door is unlocked right now. If somebody walked up there and locked that door, it's going to change on the screen here automatically for us. And then just like he said, he could, from his remote device, unlock the door or lock it. You can also set triggers, like he said, his wife Jody loves the rule that she set up that says if that back door stays unlocked for 10 minutes, to text her. So now she could automatically, we could set it up, she could automatically lock, but I think she likes to call Joe and tell him he left the back door unlocked. So it's part of the game, right? So that's just a good example. And we went from really 3 locks in the house, and I think we're up to about, 12 locks, because he's put them on all the machine shed doors, and also one of his hired men down there, he's put 4 locks down on those doors. So just a great technology, not one that we developed. It's using a Yale lock. So a lot of these sensors and devices are have been developed and have come into the market over the last really several years by leading manufacturers. And that's one thing I want to really stress too. What we're showing you today, this doesn't cost thousands of dollars. This is affordable. This is why smart technology is going to be very mainstream. I can pretty much bet, and the industry analysts will say 40%, we got a highly educated crowd in here, so probably better than 40% of you are going to look for some home automation. You're going to see a benefit in being able to control your thermostat, never go home to your house dark, have a camera to watch your kids when they come home and come through the front door, send you a picture when that happens. Joe's got his camera system. You see one of the cameras down there below, and we've got that set up on a rule. During the daytime, it's just recording video or looking at live video. But at nighttime, it can detect motion. So if Joe and Jody are gone off to bed and somebody pulls into their homestead, farmstead there, it's going to detect motion, and then it's going to notify either via email, text, or even send a snapshot of that car that just drove in the driveway. So if Jody and Joe have gone away, and I think Joe's a perfect example. He's got kids that live in Omaha and kids that live in Minneapolis, and Jody made the comment the other day, Joe seems to be a little bit more at ease going away because he can sit there on his smartphone as he's driving up Interstate 35 and he can check on the place. So these are real life things that I think are going to be very mainstream. Pop back to the main menu, if I could. You guys got a lot of pictures going on there. Yeah. I think the only other thing that I probably would show, the thermostat. Let's just pop on the thermostat. And these smart thermostats, these are $150 thermostats. So again, just a reference point. We're not talking thousands of dollars. And so, if you pop on the thermostat, you can set thresholds. So in January, if you did go away for the weekend or went to Phoenix for the winter, you could set a threshold of saying, if my temperature in my house goes below 40 degrees, send me a text. Send me a text, send my neighbors a text, send my loved ones a text. So you don't have to come home back from Phoenix from the winter and you've got pipes that busted and water in the basement. So again, just very straightforward, user-friendly type of technology. I'll ask Joe and John. I know John's down there. Have I missed anything? Hopefully it gives you a breath of what smart technology is all about. Yes?
Greg, is this available on standard iPhones and Android devices?
Yes, and I think good. Standardization has been another really key factor of why we've seen this. We've heard about smart homes or these types of things for years, but usually it was only affordable by the person that was building the $500,000 house in West Des Moines and was pulling cable in their house and that expense. So there we were talking thousands of dollars. This is wireless technology amongst the devices. And so it's made it very affordable, again, in order to really lay out whether it's a farmstead or it's just a private home. So, good question. Any others?
How far away can it be from where you're, changing it with your phone versus where the actual home or farm is?
Okay, well, the two things, that sensors and devices have to be within, let's say, 100 feet. And it's considered a mesh technology. And what I mean by mesh technology is devices will actually play off of each other. So like in the case of the farmstead where you got outside buildings and stuff, you've got to have some other further expansion to get to those buildings. From a remote capability from my phone, I just got to have mobile service. And I probably will have to have a data plan on my mobile service, which most anyone that has a smartphone is going to have a data plan. I can be anywhere. I can be in Hong Kong and get an alert. Or I could be on my way back from Phoenix, and I want to turn up my thermostat and have it all nice, toasty, warm in January. I can do that as I board the plane. So things like that, doesn't really matter where you're at, whether it's remote device, computer, laptop, just a device.
How does the profile system work?
The profile is really setting up where, good question. Let's say I've got teenagers. Okay, they all got smartphones. But I don't want my teenagers to have control of the thermostat. But I want them to be able to turn on lights, unlock doors, open the garage door, things like that. So profiles is a way to go in there and set up what we call sub-accounts. And sub-accounts being that you can have different levels of permission by different users. So, any other questions? Did you forget anything, Christy?
What's the speed for the broadband, and how much bandwidth does it take?
Devices take minimal broadband connectivity, and that's the other beautiful part about this type of technology as far as it relates to sensors and devices, because they're pretty much asleep when something's not occurring. Like a lock, a Yale lock that sits on a door, it's asleep unless something occurs. Somebody's trying to get into the house, go into the house, or go out of the house. So low bandwidth requirements. It's for broadband connectivity. It's not for dial-up. It can work very effectively also on wireless or mobility for cellular type reach. And particularly as we see a lot of these cellular networks upgrade to 4G and LTE, I mean, it's just going to make that expansion of devices such as this come to fruition. I'll just give you one endorsement, and it's just one that's 2 days ago and just shows you the power. I mean, John Chambers, who's the CEO of Cisco, did an interview on Monday in the USA Today, and he made the statement on the very last part of his interview talking about the connectivity. The next big wave in technology is connectivity to sensors, and the number is staggering. It's like 500 billion sensors are going to be connected via this. And he even called out, which I don't know if he's a farm boy or not, I'm going to have to find out, but he called out agriculture, and he used that as an example. And he said the farmer, the corn farmer he called out, is going to be able to be more productive by the ability of the smartphone and connectivity to sensors and devices. So that was a pretty strong statement to see John Chambers pull that out as far as where industry is going. So we're really, I think INS, I'm originally from Iowa myself, and Iowa's is always to me has been in a leading edge in a lot of perspective, technology, education, and I think with the Iowa telecommunication companies and INS, I think that you'll see over the next months and years, you'll see a very much penetration of these types of devices. We're showing you a grain farmer today. Joe's got a little bit of livestock on his property. We've seen, and think about this, we've seen a lot of also opportunity or results in hog confinement. Think about a hog confinement facility. What's important to hog confinement is temperature, power, water. Poultry. Poultry is a big one because especially in the summertime, if a poultry farmer loses airflow or temperature, he can lose hundreds of thousands of birds very quickly.
How long have you guys had this technology out, and how many users do you have? Farmers, are they across the country? Or
yeah. For us, it is across the country. We are very focused on the telephone company marketplace or the telecommunications marketplace, and so we have it across the country deployed. We probably are reaching about 500,000 subscribers.
How long have you been out?
And we've actually, our platform's been up and going for about 2.5 years. Now, we've seen just for a lot of reasons in the last 12 to 18 months, service providers, telecommunication companies are really jumping on board. They're really adapting their platforms. And that's kind of the first step. So I don't want to mislead that this is something that, it's like 2 years in the making, so to speak, a lot of deployments. We're at the edge. Technology, we're not at the bleeding edge, as they would say, because cloud technology has been around for a long time. We actually are, as a company, we started first down just in the enterprise or commercial space. And if you can imagine a distribution center, manufacturing facility, lots of opportunity to connect to sensors and devices in that environment. But we really started putting a focus about a year and a half ago into the the independent telecommunications companies, because some people don't realize there's 760 of them that serve rural America. And they represent about 20-some million subscribers. There's a lot of people, they think it's just AT&T, CenturyLink, and Verizon. And then the Comcast and the MediaComs and stuff as far as the cable companies are provided. But I can tell you from my experience, and as we deploy, some of the best technology sits in rural America. We have a lot of the big boys, a lot more competition in the metropolitan areas that they market to. So the technology sometimes they're catching up.
When did it click for you guys that, after you start with commercial space, when did it click with that, agriculture took a really big market? You guys
Yeah, good question. Well, pretty early on for
Craig,
me, because I'm a farm boy. Yeah.
Can you repeat some of the questions? We're having some difficulty hearing.
Oh, okay. Okay, Marco, right?
Yes.
Marco asked the question is about when did it kind of click for us to look at agriculture as a market? And my answer is pretty early on. I'm a farm boy. My dad was cattle feeder, grain farmer, so I recognized right away that there's lots of sensors and devices in a farm operation. And looking at a farmer like Joe, I mean, it's staggering when he steps up into that tractor or that combine today. I mean, he can fall asleep until it gets to the end of the field, and then he's got to turn the tractor around. But they haven't figured that one out yet. But so it's staggering the technology there. So we really saw pretty early on, or I did personally, to set the company direction, and particularly since we were dealing with folks like INS and Interstate and these independents, because that's what they service. They serve predominantly rural America. And agriculture, as we know, I like to say is farmers like Joe, they keep getting bigger as far as an operator, and so efficiency and productivity and technology all falls into the same play. And it's really important to me that whether it's Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, any of the states, it's really important to continue to see deployment and technology in the rural area. I always tell my kids, here's the important thing about the farmer. When you sit down and eat, remember the farmer, because that's the only way you're eating, is the farmer. So a lot of people forget that in the city.
Craig, I understand Joe is a customer of Interstates, or Emerson Southwest, I guess. Can you explain the technical partnership between you and INS?
Yeah.
And the company?
Yeah. We really, we've been, let's say, courting each other, so to speak, I'll use that word, for about 6+ months. And, we really recognize, particularly in Iowa, that INS is so integrated with the independent telecommunication companies in Iowa. I mean, they're shareholders in that. They have this massive network. And I'll tell you, you can go around, there is 22 other fiber state networks in the country. You won't see one like this. So this is another leading edge that Iowa is in position. And INS definitely is looked upon within their peers of being able to have that capability. So we knew that that was the way for us to go. In other parts of the country, you have bigger telephone companies, and we've got, gosh, I think we're up to about 35+ different communication companies that we have deployed, but in some cases, they're larger. Iowa is made up of a lot of small independents. Just to give you some comparison, out of those 760 independents that are in the United States, 150 are in Iowa. So that's 20%. So it was important for us too, as a solutions provider, for us to look at what was the best horse to ride. And I don't see Bob in the room. I told him he's a Trojan horse. The best horse to ride in Iowa. And for us, that was INS.
Craig, there's a question from our streaming service.
Sure.
One of our viewers asked, how difficult is it to install the grain bin sensor?
Okay, good question. I mean, it's like anything. There's some setup. You have to get power to the grain bin. We actually used an electrician. It's one of Joe's electricians down in Southwest Iowa that he's used for a number of things. And John really I mean, I would say you probably spend a day with 2 bins setting it up because it is power that has to go up there. We had to put up the wireless communication devices, but it was just probably about a day. That company is actually based out of Lincoln, Nebraska, called BinMaster, and they are in their space of monitors for grain bins. They're probably the market share. If you drive in and stop at any co-op in Iowa, they probably have a bin master sitting at the way top of some of their silos that's giving them those same type of measurements. There's definitely, and I know, Joe, you're evident of it, you're putting up, what, a 55,000 bushel bin as we speak?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. So there's more bins and capacities also being put up at the farm location. Is that kind of is there a shift for that, or is there more bins being put up on the farm?
I think so, Craig. They're generally larger bins that are being put up at this point.
Okay. And I think that's a real safety thing too. I mean, you know, when we first talked to Joe about what Bin Master could do, and it was just the mere fact that he or one of his hired men doesn't have to climb up the ladder or go up the steps to look to see how full that bin's getting. So just a pure safety factor there. Joe mentioned too, temperature inside the bin, moisture. We've got a moisture sensor that's going to go into this new bin that Joe's putting up. And I think when you're drying corn, you want to get it down to what's kind of the drying level?
About 14 to 15%, Craig. I was just going to add that we're in an aging population too. I'm 58 years old. The average age Iowa farmer, I believe, is 57 right now.
Okay, good point.
So
you don't.
Yeah,
are you trying to tell me you don't climb up that ladder as quick?
Not near as quick.
But you know, and that's an example on that drying corn with the cost of propane, right, is what you're using to dry. Just the mere fact, if that corn reaches that level of 14% and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, guess what we can do from the cloud? We can shut the dryers off. So we can show cost savings not only for indication of when the corn's dry, cost savings as far as shutting off the dryers. And that, let me tell you, that's a simple thing. That's an on-off type of sensor. Shut it off, power it off. Or tell him if the dryer goes off, maybe the motor burn up, which I know happens.
Right.
We can give him that indication, whatever time of day it is, and so that he knows his dryer's gone off. So, question?
You said Joe had another bin down the road somewhere away from the farmstead?
Yeah.
How hard is it to get that tied into the whole system?
Well, there's a couple ways. We had line of sight at this other grain bin, so it was about 3/4 of a mile from his office right there. So we just did a point-to-point, and that was a pretty cost-effective way to do it. Where a lot of the telecommunication companies in Iowa and across the country, you know, they got cable running down the road. And this happens to be where these other bins are. There used to be a house there. Joe tore down that house a long time ago. But guess what? There's a telecommunication cable running by that house. And so that connectivity could be one of 2 ways. It could be a point-to-point or one of 3 ways. It could be a point-to-point, which is what we did. It could be another cable connection to the phone company to provide that broadband, that internet connection, or it could be a cellular data connection. So it could be one of 3 in that respect. So even with these farmers, as they scatter the grain bins across their acreages, you know, if they've got self-service, they've got broadband running by the place, or in some cases, as I described, a point-to-point. So yeah, good question.
That's point-to-point wireless, right?
Yeah.
How does that work on the weather? Like a bad snowstorm, or do you lose connection, or?
No, it's usually, I mean, I'm not an engineer. It's an unlicensed frequency on that point-to-point. You know, I mean, some of those blowing blizzards in Iowa won't guarantee anything. But, you know, the best connection would be if you had let's say like hog confinement, and say you had a critical, I think the best connection would be a wired connection, a broadband connection, so that weather doesn't come into play. Now, another question a lot of people will say, well, let's say you lose that broadband connection, and let's say you lose power. That doesn't mean Joe's locks and, you know, he's not going to be locked out of his house. And his thermostat still works, so all those devices still function. What he loses when he doesn't have a broadband connection, loses this. He loses this control until that broadband connection comes back up. But with networks like INS and interstate communications, their servers never go down.
Yeah.
Right?
Only redundant, absolutely.
Redundancy, that's it.
Exactly right.
Yeah, and that's another real important thing too. You'll see a lot of these solutions on the market. I mean, you can walk into Lowe's down the street here, and you'll see some smart technology there. And I'm not gonna bash the competition, but connectivity is key. You can see a lot of other technology, but if you don't have that reliable connectivity, you know, you're going to be out of commission. And I'm really, you know, I'm passionate, of course, is that I think that people like Joe, if his cameras are down, he ain't going to be happy because he's attached to it. It's become part of his culture, as I say. Just like, you know, it's like all of us, you know, our smartphones are usually not too far more than a foot away from us, even when we're sleeping. So it's like we get attached to technology and it becomes mainstream. Any other questions?
I just want to point out that Marty and Matt, I forgot to recognize you, Marty Schwager and Matt Steinfeld from the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation policy team joined us today. Thank you all for coming. We do have some journalists on the Emerson end of things, but I think we should go ahead and wrap this up. But interstate communication folks are here, Craig is here, Joe's here, Chat Mobility. We will all stick around for any of the journalists who are here to answer extra one-on-one questions or do one-on-one interviews.
Might also like to add the man behind the screen, Chris Williams, is our video web conferencing manager. So if you have any questions on the technology that we're using just here in making the two remote locations come together, he can answer those. And also we have a subject matter expert on the INS side of the house who is working with Craig, and his name is Bob Agnew, and I believe he's standing around the corner there.
How can we forget Bob, Christy?
Say he was here.
Yeah.
Is this available to every farmer in Iowa now, or just certain areas? Hey, we have one question here.
I think I heard
and this is probably toward Christy, and that is the service available all across Iowa? You know, what's kind of the timing of availability?
Good question. On the map, you can see the territories that INS serves in conjunction with our partners, the independent telecommunication companies. Unfortunately, no, it is not available across the entire state 100%, but where there's a will, there's a way. And so if we do identify areas or territories who are looking to turn up services, we can partner with some of the other local providers to help make that happen. We do have hopes in that we will begin deploying this live into the marketplace by the beginning of first quarter this year. We're just working with Craig and his team to develop and or determine all of the devices that are required. And our goal is to make this as simple as possible for the partners to deploy this. And so we're looking to be kind of that centralized clearinghouse, if you will, for the solutions and making it very easy for them to go out and start delivering the technology. So.
One other quick question, if I could. There's a question on the chat about farm safety and whether or not, like, say, a tractor roll or a grain bin entrapment. Is there anything related to that type of risk that this technology addresses today?
Yeah, grain bin entrapment. I mean, there's definitely some sensors there that could alert of an event that's occurring. I mean, and I guess I'm thinking about just loss of oxygen that's in a grain bin. I mean, there's those types of sensors out there. Tractor roll, that's an interesting one. I haven't thought about that one.
Something to think about, I guess, then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, are you saying that this is not available right now for a farmer who wants to use it, number one? Number two, what's the app called? Number three, how much is it going to cost farmers?
It is available.
We need to repeat those for the...
Yes, okay, 3 questions. Is it available right now? Yes, obviously. Like Craig said earlier, he's been deploying this for 2.5 years already. Yeah. It's the arrangement in which we're delivering it through INS being kind of that middleman, if you will. and helping make it easier to deploy for the independents instead of them having to do it individually. Cost is the second question or third question. May have to come back to the second one. Cost is, each solution is very unique. And so each requirement that the user farmer needs is unique. So it's very difficult to just put one price tag on that.
Craig, do you have a general range? You've been doing it for a
Yeah,
couple
I
of
mean,
years.
I can tell you, like, I'll just use home automation. Home automation is typically, and again, it kind of depends on the number of sensors and stuff, is going to be anywhere at the low end, like $20, and probably at the high end, like $50. And there's other solutions in the market right now, I mean, even in Des Moines, that you'll see, or elsewhere in Iowa, and that's about the range. $20 to $50 is about the range on that. Farm applications, just like Christy said, you know, it's not really the fact that that bin monitor is taking so much more data. I mean, it's a real simple device, but there's an investment, obviously, on those sensors. Those sensors, to give you some ballpark, they run about $1,500 on those sensors, and but connectivity is virtually, you know, it's kind of in that same price range, in that standpoint. But we see other types of things, like especially you get into some more, let's say, complicated environments where either those sensors will be a little bit more expensive, or connectivity as far as the data is going to be.
So I guess my question, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm not like being direct, but like,
Okay, sure.
if I'm a farmer, how much money is coming out of my pocket to get this up and running?
Okay. You know, again, I mean, it's going to depend on what they all want to do, but they could be like in Joe's case, where we've got locks and we've got what you all saw today. That capital investment's probably about $5,000 to $6,000. Okay, the capital investment.
For their equipment.
Okay, for the equipment, and the service is about $50.
Okay.
Equivalent to a data plan
Yeah,
for your smartphone.
and that's again, that's
based on
my
devices.
yeah, that's
Per
my
month. Right,
yeah.
that would be a reoccurring.
Yeah, and that's a reoccurring, and that's my point, is that it's affordable. You know, I mean, even though, I mean, every farmer, and I can pick on Joe because since I'm a farm boy, you know, every farmer, you know, their pockets are sewn. They don't have any money, but things like technology and what Joe talked about today, they'll spend money all day long on that.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to put it down, but I just want to make clear.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I want to point out too is that the good thing about service providers, telecommunication companies like Interstate and all these other 150 in Iowa and across the country, they're really good about subsidizing equipment. They've been subsidizing equipment in plans like chat, or any cellular company. You know, that iPhone didn't cost AT&T $99. So it's sign the 2-year contract. It's going to cost you $50 a month, and they'll subsidize the equipment over that period of time. So I know we have seen that pretty consistently, almost 100%, that's how service providers want to go to market.
And we think that's what will happen here in Iowa as well. The word independent will ring true, that those individual companies will be able to price and package the solution according to whatever their needs and circumstances may warrant. So INS won't be doing that pricing, you know, provide recommendations, but we won't be doing the pricing for them.
And they would come direct to you guys for the app.
Yeah, the app will come through INS. We customize our app, so it will be a locally branded product. Actually, you know, we're providing what I call the heavy lifting in the cloud, and that makes it possible. So no matter where that person is, if I'm in Phoenix, if I'm down the street having coffee, I'm giving that connectivity from that cloud. So it's kind of a 3-way path. You got the local phone company that's providing the last mile broadband connection back to INS through their fiber network, which is where their servers will be housed and connected to our cloud. So it's kind of a 3-way process, and that's pretty typical in cloud type service offerings.
So Craig, when you say it will be tailored, Interstate will put its name?
They can, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and you know, that's really important. That was important to me personally because, you know, these phone companies have been around for decades. I mean, I know there's probably some in Iowa. Actually, we got one in Wisconsin that's 116 years old this year. And they're proud of their brand. They're community leaders. They go to church with these people. They have coffee with these people. And they have a very high level of service. And I'm very passionate about that because I think, I'm picking on corporate America, I think big companies sometimes have lost that customer service. And so I think that that's what makes this a perfect storm, so to speak, in offering rural areas leading technology.
That just supports our commitment. We, started the day with that, or the morning with that, and it just comes all the way back to the Iowa LinkedUp initiative and why the three entities came together, because there is a bit of a disconnect and misunderstanding of what the rural telecommunication companies have enabled in the state. And we have continued to build our fiber network, and when communities are looking for building out an industrial park or an agriculture center, they are not served by an INS partner, they're coming to INS saying, how can you help us? Because right now, they're not getting that same type of reciprocation from the larger players. And so that is really an important element that we want to make sure everyone understands here and what we enable. So. And it's diversifying our services as well. As the independent phone companies are losing their traditional landlines, we need to look at ways in which we can help them continue to provide service offerings. And so this was just a natural transition.
And this is really important, and I'll finish it on one comment too, and I should have done this earlier. And I know we have some representatives from the USDA. I think they're down there. Is anyone here from USDA? Okay. I want to recognize the USDA and the FCC. Because if we didn't have the government support behind rural America, we would not have this technology sitting and reaching what's so important, again, the people that put food in our mouth. And I think that message has to continually be driven. And there's a lot of changes, and I don't want to get into a political discussion, but there's a lot of changes that's going on in how subsidies and funding and stimulus money and stuff come about. And people that don't understand that, again, they need to remember that when they put food in their mouth. So I think that's real important to Iowa and any rural area to make sure that they understand the FCC and the USDA and some of these programs. And I know Joe's an expert on a lot of that in that respect.
You can tell we're very passionate about this. We can stand here and talk all day, but we have taken up our hour and don't want to keep you any longer. But if you do have questions, please seek us out. We're here to help and to answer those. And again, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Emerson. Okay.
So,
Yeah, good job.
Oh, thank you.